DJ SR.
A tornado
Play
flew
something
around my room before you came. Excuse the mess it made. It usually doesn't rain in Southern California.
Next on the list is temperature. You want them to be in high 70s, so that's 77 plus to low 80s. You don't want them to get over 83 degrees, even if you're breeding them, just because that's what I like to call discus weather. Discus like it really, really hot. That's my phone. But discus like it really, really hot in the tanks. I have no idea why. They're from the main Amazon, so I'm guessing it's just a lot hotter there. But discus like it way too hot for most of the dwarf cichlids, and a lot of other cichlids and fish, from that matter. So you want to keep it higher end of the spectrum, but not discus weather. Obviously, when you're breeding, you can change the temperature depending on some other factors that I'll get into later in the video. Alright, next on the list is lighting. On this tank, as you might have noticed, it's the 30-inch 2-bulb C5 light fixture that I had on my 29-gallon. It's pretty bright. I've got a glass, sheet of glass over this tank to try and reflect some of the light, but it's way too bright for this tank. I just have it here because I don't exactly know where I'm gonna put it anytime soon. So it's right there, so I can see what I'm doing with these guys, so the mothers can see their fry better. They could already see them like perfectly fine, even in that really dark tank. Last video I'd use my flashlight to see in this tank, but the fry could still see their mothers, which is plus 50 for dwarf cichlids on my list. But so you want it to be kind of dim, maybe as dim as that 20 long over there. You can see by comparison, pretty dark. Most of the light that I had in these two tanks and in those tubs were is the ambient light from the two 18-inch T8 bulbs. They are duct taped to the ceiling. It's pretty bright over the breeding tanks that are behind me, but not so bright in these tanks, as you can see. So you don't want it to be too bright, unless of course you have plants in here that need brighter lights. I usually use crypts. There's a crypt right there. That is Cryptocrine Wenti or Lutea. I think it's Wenti. Oh no, that might be Lutea. Those crypts have been in here. They're way too long for me to remember. Low light plants that can survive in that kind of thing will really help with tank. So it's crypt and a dwarf sag on the bottom over there. Some more crypt. Alright, next on the list is the actual fish tank or aquarium that these fish will be housed in. Obviously, as I already said, they don't get much bigger than 5 inches, excluding dwarf pikes. So you can keep them in tanks that are 10 gallons, 5.5s for the smaller end, so rams, dwarf, Apistos, and Pilphichromis. So yeah, 5.5 gallons. I use 2.5s for females that are rearing yet fry, like the tank behind me, which I don't feel like turning the camera around to film. But obviously the bigger the tank, the more stable the water, the better. Also, if you have a bigger tank, you can breed them in a colony, which again I'll get to. But you can keep them in pretty small tanks. As you can see, this is 33 long, which is 4 feet long, 48 inches, 12, I think it's 12 feet wide, and then 13 inches tall, I think. It's not that tall, and it's pretty long. I'll get to that in a second. 20 long is practically the same dimensions, except that it's 30 inches, and then 10 gallons and 2.5s, 5.5s, those guys don't really matter. 15 gallons work well. Make sure it's not a 15-gallon high. Those tanks won't really matter or help you at all. The bigger the tank, you can have them in a colony setting. The smaller tank, like a 10-gallon, you can have them in pairs. I've bred a long time ago. If you look at one of my videos, one of my first Apistogramma cockatoides videos, maybe a year back, I bred them in, I bred a trio with 1 male, 2 females in a 10-gallon tank. I had a lot of cover, and I ended up moving one of the females to her own little rearing container inside of the tank. But if you have enough cover, maybe like a wall of Java moss or a bunch of driftwood or clay or leaf litter works really well, you can have even 2 or 3 females in a 10-gallon tank. I wouldn't recommend having 2 or 3. I really only use a pair, considering most of dwarf cichlids either form a pair or are harem breeding, and even the harem breeders can breed in a pair unless it's a trifasciata. Big tank, little tank, you want to keep them in pairs for a smaller tank. Trios and harems and colonies for the, I'd say, 3 feet plus tanks. If you have a 125 that you're insane enough to use for cichlid breeding, I would definitely never use like a big fish, like the bigger Geophagus, discus, angels. I would never use that if I had a 6 foot long tank. 6 foot long tank, I'm talking about major colonies of dwarf cichlids. But anyway, off my rants. Next on the list for tanks are footprint versus height. Now the footprint of a fish tank is, what you may have guessed, how or what the area of the bottom of the tank is. So if you have a tank that is 1 inch or 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, your footprint is going to be 1 square foot. Really don't want a tall tank for breeding dwarf cichlids. Obviously if you have dither fish in there, or if it's a community tank that you're just letting the fish breed, you can let it be as tall as you can. But for a footprint for a breeding pair of Cockatoides or Bramarazi, whatever, I wouldn't go any smaller than a 10 gallon or 5.5. I don't remember what the dimensions of 5.5, but a 10 gallon is 12 by 24 inches. So that's 1 foot by 2 feet. And it's really good dimensions. It's not that tall. I think it's 12 inches tall, so it's a foot tall. They're not going to have that much swimming space anyway. They're not going to go to the top of the tank other than to feed. The 33 long is 4 feet by 12, but you can see the footprint of this tank is pretty big compared to the height. What is it? It's like 5 times as long as it is tall, so that's a good measurement. So footprint is a lot better, more important than height when you're breeding these guys. Alright, on to the fun part, breeding.
What you need, what you need, I got what you need, what you need, what you need, what you need, I got what you need. LOL, white America, assassinate my character. Money